Hi, this is Douglas Lucky Larson on the Retire Early and Often channel. Today we are talking again about the housing bubble and specifically a couple recent videos by George Gammon, one of my heroes in the macroeconomic space. On this next slide, let's take a look at some of his headlines. Now, first, let me say that I have only respect for George Gammon. His whiteboard videos are amazing at breaking down very complex economic concepts, and then he explains the most probable outcomes. I really respect his research and analysis. However, I also have some other experts that I absolutely trust, specifically on the U.S. real estate issues that we're facing right now, because they have a lot of experience and a lot of skin in the game. They don't just talk the talk, they walk the walk. Guys like Ken McElroy and Jason Hartman are true leaders in the real estate space with thousands and thousands of doors between them and at least 60 years experience between them. And now they've been in all kinds of markets around the country. Mike Simonsen with Altos Research is also an expert on all real estate trends around the United States. Some of the information that I share with you today is from these experts, and some is my own research and my own experience. Now, I currently have rental properties in 3 western states. I've been a landlord for over 20 years in Hawaii, California, and Utah, and even Idaho. I continue to buy real estate whenever I see good value. I'm very bullish on real estate demand and prices, at least over the next couple of years. Now, I'm not saying that housing price increases are a good thing. It might look good on my net worth statement or even my rental income that's going up. But as an overall part of inflation that we're living through, it's not a good thing. Now, I'm just trying to anticipate the best moves for me and my finances, for me and my family. The main reason that I think prices will continue to rise in suburban, single family, and even like townhomes and low rise condos is because of what our government politicians and agencies have promised to do. Not only have they promised to keep assets inflated, but they're also planning to do it mostly in the lower end real estate. Now, they've already proven that they're willing to throw hundreds of billions of dollars into the housing sector, I guess believing that they're helping to get first-time buyers and underserved communities into homes. And at the same time, they're blowing up the demand and prices with their interventions. It's crazy. So, again, George Gammon, he and many other financial experts talk about housing prices at all-time highs. And while we do see that on this slide, let's take a look here. Again, the headlines. Data screams, housing bubble, new home sales tank. What does it mean? Yeah, well, when we dig a little closer in, we'll see. But let's take a look at just this one little graph here. The yellow line indicates these are real or inflation adjusted real estate prices. And again, you see this line. Let me change this over now for red. This line down here in blue, this is nominal. And this guy looks crazy. Now that's what everybody likes to point to, is this incredible tail on the end here with everything going up. But as we'll see on the next slide, most homes are not sold on price. They are sold on payment. Just like when you walk into a car dealership and the first question they ask you is, so how much can you afford each month? No talk about price, just monthly payment. On this next slide, we can see some charts on actual average monthly house payments by metro area. And that's the most important, is house price. Monthly mortgage payment, not price. So let's take a look here. Real monthly principal and interest price index. I love this. This takes the Case-Shiller, and I can't take credit for this. If you look down here, John Wake, this guy nails it. He really knows what he's looking at. He sifts through all the data, and he finds the best information that we can actually use. So let's take a look at this. This is the Case-Shiller Home Price Index. These are the 20 top metro areas. And, as we look at this, here's the bubble in 2006, 7, right here. Wow, everything was crazy. And as we look at where we are right now, I know it looks like things are up, but as we look at the average mortgage payment right here, now this does not include taxes, insurance, and maybe your HOA, but just principal and interest, we're really not that high. I mean, take a look at this, and if you trace this back all the way across here, sorry, not very straight, but we're really not that high. We're nowhere near this bubble and then this bubble over here, right? Can we agree on that? Okay, that's because we're looking at payment. So yes, I know things feel expensive, but my whole entire adult life, all I've ever heard is housing's so expensive. Well, compared to what? Compared to your rent? Compared to different cities? We'll get into that here in a second. All right, let's look at this right here. So this is data from the Federal Reserve, and they keep track of a lot of things. So let's look at this. Financial soundness indicator. Household debt service and principal payments as a percent of income. This is way down here. Way down here. Do you see this? All these crazy lines. Yeah, okay. Well, it's not looking too bad when we really look at it as a percentage of income. So, let's take a look at our next slide. By the way, even the big institutional home buyers like Blackstone, Invitation Homes, and American Homes for Rent, and others that are gobbling up single-family real estate, they don't actually use their own cash. They have giant funds and REITs, real estate investment trusts, billions of dollars in investment capital that they're using at very low interest rates. And that also drives prices up. Generally, they're not buying luxury homes, but they are typically competing with the suburban single-family buyers on the lower, say, 20% of each marketplace. Artificially low interest rates translates to more competition and higher prices, plain and simple. But if payments remain low because they're 30-year fixed, well, nobody's defaulting and buyers keep buying. So George Gammon asks, well, if the Fed is signaling right now that they're going to raise rates this year, won't that drive prices down? Well, let's take a closer look at these charts. So I tried to put these right next to each other so that we could see the same time frame. So the top graph is an average sale price over the last 50 years. The lower graph is the same time frame, but with 30-year fixed mortgage rates. Now, the last time the Fed raised interest rates just a bit in 2018, look at this lower chart, and this represents about 2018 right here. Interest rates went up, whoop, just that little bit right there. And stock prices and the real estate market appeared to wobble. Whoops. Well, then back came the Fed, lowering interest rates and buying treasuries and mortgage-backed securities like crazy. I am willing to bet that they're going to do that again if there's even a hint of a slowdown or deflating prices. On the next slide, we're going to discuss another question from George Gammon. I just want you to take a really close look here. Once again, we did have COVID that appeared here in 2020. And boy, the Fed really dropped rates right there. And of course, that's where we always look and see this total jack in prices here. But it wasn't just the interest rates, although that was a part of it. Let's take a look here. So George's next question is, if you're thinking about buying real estate now, how can prices go up another, say, 50%? Well, for real estate to make sense, you don't really need it to go up 50% this year or even in the next 10 years. It's all about cash flow. Now, I try not to max out my debt on every property. And some investors, like Jason Hartman, he will tell you, refi till you die. But I'm not in that camp. I love great cash flow, passive rental income. That's what it's all about. You don't get paid to own most stocks, although I do own a few stocks in the energy sector that pay dividends. But real estate pays great money every single month. And if you are managing right, even though the listing price of that asset might stay the same or even go down, your income can stay the same or even get better. In fact, in the last real estate downturn, when many people lost their homes, 2008, 9, 10, single family rent went up in many areas because, guess what? People like to live indoors even after they've been foreclosed on. Who would have thought? Now, to answer the specific question about how can prices actually go up substantially when real estate is generally at record highs right now? Well, let's look at some of these charts and graphs. I especially like these two. This one here, wow. This talks about the greatest bubble risks in cities in the world. The markets in the United States, like Los Angeles over here, San Francisco, these aren't even making the top 10. Let's go over to this one here, and this lists them in order. We got Frankfurt, Toronto, Hong Kong, Munich, Zurich, Vancouver, Stockholm. There's other places where things are just unbelievably expensive. You know, many places in Canada, Europe, London, Australia, New Zealand. These things don't make the greatest affordability list. But when we look at, the top 20 bubble risk areas, well, you know what? If you're not in coastal California or New York City or Miami or Boston, you're looking pretty good. One thing to remember when we look at charts like this on affordability and bubble risk is that numbers like this are really focused on, inventory, construction, rents, and average incomes, but they don't account for other factors that are driving up prices, like foreign investors or 2 or 3 families living together and splitting the costs. Now, trust me, we are seeing that more and more in all markets. When I was living on Maui and Oahu in Hawaii and investing there, it was very common for 2 or 3 generations to live under one roof and share the expenses. It's the same thing in San Diego, where the median home price is about $750K. Well, I grew up there, and currently I have 2 units in North San Diego County. People don't choose to live there because it's cheap. They make it work even though it's expensive. Now, housing prices don't always make sense, except that that's where people want to live because of jobs or weather or family or freedom from mandates or whatever. Now, demand goes up, and if supply does not also go up fast enough, then the prices do go up. So again, back to George Gammon and his great questions. What if interest rates actually do go up? Let's take a look at the next slide, which is actually the last slide, looking at it again. So just take a look here at the late 70s and early 80s. We'll zoom in here just a little bit. Interest rates were high during this period, right? Okay, come down here. Look at those interest rates. Boom, boom. This is that period of time. But guess what? Prices also went up. If you look at, from mid-1970s all the way to mid-1980s, what did prices do? Yeah, they about doubled, maybe more than doubled in that time. Okay? We were seeing an inflation of all prices at that time, and the Fed kicked up the interest rates to cool demand, and it worked. But nominal prices still went up. Also look at the late 90s. This is when the Clinton administration decided that more people needed to be able to buy homes. Lending standards were loosened considerably. Now, as you look really close to the 90s, the interest rates were rising through 2001 and the dot-com crash. But home prices also continued to rise through that same roughly 3-year period. So look close down here. We've got this interest rates going up right here. But guess what? You look at home prices during that same period and yep, up. Home prices up, even though interest rates went up. Can that happen again? Yes, of course it can. Now, politicians and the Fed didn't mandate at that time what banks had to do, but they gave banks the green light to make riskier loans because the government promised to buy the loans and allowed for questionable mortgage-backed securities, this trend continued and expanded, even exploded through early 2007. Now, not only did lending standards loosen, interest rates also dropped right after the dot-com crash and in through, what do we have there? 9/11, right? And that only sparked even higher prices. Boom, we had this giant spike right there. Home prices just went crazy. If questionable loans can simply be sold, there's almost no risk and no limit to how much lending that banks can do. Now, I'm not saying we're going to go back there and do all those same things and have the same loose standards of the late 90s to the early 2000s, but the current administration has stated that they will do much more to, quote, help hundreds, even thousands and thousands of Americans buy their first home with grants and down payment assistance and other programs. They've already increased the purchase limits for FHA and VA loans. And in their own words, on September 1st of 2021, whitehouse.gov says we will, quote, expand the number of mortgages available for purchasers. Well, what does that mean? That can only lead to loosening standards, more lending, and higher prices, especially at the lower end of the market. Now, if interest rates actually do rise, and I don't know, they might, and they might stay risen just a little bit. But we haven't even begun to see the kinds of things that the government has been willing to do in the past to allow, or that banks are willing to do. Adjustable rate mortgages, for one. I doubt we're going to see negative amortization loans or pay option ARM loans. Those were pretty popular. But the teaser rate loans, the 7/1, 5/1, and even 3/1 ARMs, were all the rage in the early 2000s to get people buying at an affordable initial payment over the first year or 3 or 5 or 7 years, and not thinking about 3 or 5 or 7 years down the road when that interest rate might go up. We're also seeing already 40-year loan programs come on the scene, which reduces the monthly payment, but of course will likely drive up prices, especially at that lower end where people are the most sensitive to actual monthly payments. Now, you also have to consider that demographics, like the home buying demand of millennials, is a huge factor. Millennial demand for homes is increasing and won't even peak for another 6 years or so. The millennial generation was a little bit slower to, form families and buy homes than Gen X or certainly the baby boomers, but they make up a bigger group than the Gen Xers. And that's also not even to mention the immigrants that are coming into this country. Just in case you missed what's going on at our southern border, we have a lot more immigrants coming in. Now, again, because people like to live indoors, the demand for housing, especially in the low end of all the suburban areas, is growing, and supply is just not growing nearly as fast. All the trends are pointing towards higher prices for at least the next year or 2 or 3. Now, are there some unforeseen events that could break these trends and derail the probable outcome that we're seeing here? Well, of course, a much worse scariant than Omicron could certainly do it, or perhaps China could start a war with the US over Taiwan, or maybe a zombie apocalypse is just around the corner. However, let's sum things up on our final slide. Anything is possible, but right now, let's look at the real factors here. Supply, demand, demographics, government policy, rising rents, higher wages, higher building costs, all of these things point to higher prices for homes. Well, what should you do? I don't know. I'm not a financial advisor, but I can tell you what I'm doing. I just bought a house this week, and I've got 2 more offers being considered right now. I bought 6 units in the last 14 months, and I wish I had purchased even more. Only you can know what's right for you. But remember, any asset that you buy needs to make sense. and has to help you become more financially free. You have a much bigger purpose than just investing, but financial freedom can give you a little more time to pursue that purpose. Let me say that again. You have a much bigger purpose than just investing, but the financial freedom that you can get, say, from real estate or anything else, can give you a little more time to pursue your bigger purpose in this life. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe and share, because we love to bring you content, and your interaction makes all the difference. I hope to see you on the next video.